What do you think of writers who don't need to outline to write a great story?
Well, there's so many different approaches. I mean, the bottom line is either the story they're writing works or it doesn't. If it doesn't work and they don't outline, then it may be something that they want to add to their repertoire. If it does work, then whatever they've created as their process, it works. If people love the story, then whatever they do works. It's just one approach to the process of creating, developing, and constructing a story. For me, it's a deep habit to do that because one of the central problems for scriptwriters is that dramatic writing is an extremely stripped down literary form. It demands complete economy, mostly because it's a performance medium, and the only thing that it's like an iceberg where there's a bunch of parts of the story that are, part of the mechanics of the story, but the part that the audience actually sees on stage or on screen is just a sequence of events that happens. Like the guy walks into the room to get his valuable thing from out of hiding, and there's somebody watching from the window or behind the curtain with a knife. And it's just a sequence of events where the person gets the thing out of hiding, then the other person comes out and tries to take it from them. So it's a highly specific set of incidents, and there isn't room for anything else in that particular scene. And this is called separating the necessary from the unnecessary, so that the performance, generally it won't make it to performance if it's bogged down with the unnecessary because the script doesn't read well. But people will often will allow the unnecessary to creep into the script from all different directions. And the outlining process, the way I use it and the way I train in it, is that you have to get the big building blocks of your story working first. Because if the major girders and beams, if the big bones of your story don't work dramatically, then nothing else you add to it is going to matter. The details don't matter. It's like some writers will have a beautifully written scene in a script that doesn't work. It doesn't amount to anything. It's like having an ornately finished room in a house that's falling over. You got gold leaf and oak and marble and everything else, but the house is literally tipping over. So if you got to get the big structure right, and that's the most basic component of an outline. Once you get that working, then you layer in a little more detail. So if you have a sequence of events that constitutes the spine of your story, and those are just the big building blocks of your story with no detail, and you link those up and you take a look at it and go, oh, that's better than I thought it would be, or oh, I could see how I thought I had a problem in Act 2, and I can see that clearly now that I've got the major building blocks, and then you improve on that, and then look at it again and go, yeah, now that works. Then you can break that up into acts and develop a little more detail for Act 1. So you gradually layer in a little more detail as it becomes necessary, but layering in only that which is necessary. Then you do Act 2 and Act 3. Then you take Act 1 and break it down into sequences. There's 2 to 5 sequences in an act and 2 to 5 scenes in a sequence. So you break the opening act down into, say, 3 or 4 sequences. You take the first sequence and you've already got a chain of events that you've already figured out from when you figured out the act. And then you expand upon that a little more. It becomes necessary to think it through in a little more detail, so you flesh out your outline a little bit more. And then you do it for the next sequence and you flesh that out. And it's flesh out, not flush out, like putting flesh on bones. And you do that for all the sequences. You develop a little more detail. So now you've got an outline that has a reasonable amount of detail to it. And this sequence is tight and dramatic in and of itself. When the audience watch that sequence, they're on the edge of their seat. It's compelling. That sequence serves its function of what the act is intended to do. The act, this unit serves this unit. This is part of this and contributes toward what the act is trying to do. The act serves the whole because it does its part of the mechanism that helps make the whole story work. So it's a unit inside of a unit inside of a unit. So then you take the opening sequence and you divide it down into scenes. And so if this is your opening sequence and there's a chain of events that constitute that sequence, you're going to say, okay, this part of it is the opening scene. So there's still that chain of events that you'd already figured out that constitute that scene. Now you're going to take those events and think it through in a little more detail. You expand upon it a little more. And now you've got final detail. So you have a highly detailed outline, and then you actually write that scene. Then you think through the next scene and expand upon the detail, but you're still rigorously excluding the unnecessary and only layering in that which is necessary to the sequence of events. It's all about the forward progression of events. And that's particular to dramatic writing. In a novel, you really have a lot more leeway and flow, but in something that's being staged, you have to present a clear forward progression. And you want that progression to move well and not veer off into unrelated territory, or you don't want it to have a dead spot that's flat dramatically so you lose the audience. Basically, continuous, coherent, compelling dramatic action is the name of the game. And dramatic action is not car chases and shootouts. It's not mere action. It's a state of action that you put the audience in. It's all about getting the audience on the edge of their seat and keeping them there. They're in a state of action, the audience. So continuous, coherent, compelling dramatic action. The word compelling is actually redundant because dramatic action is by definition compelling, but it just helps people understand it better. So you always want to have dramatic action. You don't want to ever revert to mere story. You don't want to have parts of your script go flat dramatically where it's mere information. You want it to always be actable and compelling. So the scene still is A causes B, which causes C, which causes D, and so on. It has a good progression of forward action with nothing. It's only that which is going to be on stage or on screen with nothing else. You continuously strip away the unnecessary, and the unnecessary kills scripts. The unnecessary, you have overwritten dialogue, overwritten descriptions, overwritten scenes that shouldn't be there, sequences that shouldn't be there, bloated sequences. Sometimes you have a whole act that's unnecessary. And what Price said was, for that matter, your entire script may be unnecessary, which is true way more often than it should be. Those 98% of scripts that don't work are unnecessary. They do not work. They're landfill. They can't do anything with them. So if you are rigorously excluding the unnecessary from the big bones of the story to each act, to each sequence, and each scene, then you building the script section by section and including only that which is necessary to the forward action of the story. And the unnecessary is rigorously excluded at all times, then your working draft consists of only that which is necessary. Every scene is tight and dramatic. The first three scenes, each of which is tight and dramatic, make up the opening sequence, which is in and of itself tight and dramatic. Those four sequences, each of which are tight and dramatic, make up the opening act, which in and of itself is tight and dramatic. And each of the acts, which are tight and dramatic, make up the overall story, which is in and of itself tight and dramatic. So the working draft that you end up with is going to be very much in the ballpark. It's going to be lean and mean. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't need work. It generally needs a lot of work, but it's not a bloated mess. It's a tight thing that's highly functional, and you can, it's basically the whole premise behind what I teach is that, and this came straight from Price, that you can, that if you properly engineer your script before you write it, then it will save most of the, you can use the same amount of energy to properly engineer your script before you write it as you would put into 25 rewrites. So it's better to structure it properly and then write it and then build from there. And storytelling is not always so hard to do, but dramatizing a story is very tricky.
What if a writer says, though, these are necessary parts to my story, but outside eyes say, no, this is unnecessary, takes me out of it? What is missing from this writer that they think that their necessary scenes or dialogue is actually unnecessary?
Well, well, first of all, either they're right or they're not. Either the script works and people want to make it, or it doesn't. If a professional evaluates the script and says, I'm not going to make this, then it doesn't work in that instance. Now, the next professional they meet might say, this is brilliant, I love it. So it's, you know, it's flexible in many ways, but it's, it has to do a lot with just the craft of a dramatist of that writer, because they may perceive that something is necessary to the telling of the story when actually it only bogs it down or kills it. And that happens a lot if they're overly attached to the story and, you know, how much craft they have. But it's really, the showrunner I was talking to, she said that she sees so many scripts that will not work for their show. And this is one of the top network shows in the world. And she's the showrunner. She's a showrunner on it. She said two things. What they write either is producible, our star will agree to do it, and it will work, or it won't, and we're not making it because it's not what we make. She said that she can tell if somebody can write really within the first sentence. You know, a lot of people say the first 5 pages, the first page. She says, yes, first 5 pages, all that. But she said, I can tell if they can write or not in the first sentence. And what often happens is if she says to this writer, this script does not work, and the writer says, well, that's just your subjective opinion. She's like, they say that to me all the time, but they're not right. It either works or it doesn't. It's not my subjective opinion. It's my professional expertise that I look at their script for this show and it does not work. And it's not subjective. So there's professional skill sets, and then there's everybody else's opinion about what they think is professional writing. And really, it's either works or it doesn't. So people's attachment to things that they perceive are necessary is often mistaken from either an emotional attachment to the material or a mistaken sense of craft, or, you know, just they think it helps make the script work when actually it's a significant weakness in the material.
So they don't know what they don't know. In layman's
Yes,
terms.
or they don't know enough and they stick to their guns thinking they've got the goods when, like, this showrunner would not even show it to the star of the show. Because, you know, it's like, it has to be this particular thing to go into our production slate. And it's either that or it's not. We write a certain type of show. And so the writer telling them, look, it'll work, it's fresh, it's creative, it's like, that doesn't matter. It's not what we produce. So it has to do with what the professional decision makers are looking for and what in their experience ruins the script versus the opinion of the writer. And this showrunner said it's not like these are like people that never wrote anything. These are repped writers that are supposed to be professional writers, and they're not even in the ballpark. So it was a huge discrepancy between what people think works and what the high-level decision makers will let get past their gate to get into production.
Could it be that they weren't properly told the exact nature of what they're looking for? I'm just playing the devil's advocate.
No, because
here,
the show's been on for years and it's a known entity. It's like, how could you not know what we produce here? But you know, there's so many reasons why people's writing don't work. From they're a poor storyteller, they don't have craft as a dramatist, or it's just not right for the entity they're pitching it to. Their stuff might be astonishingly brilliant, but it's just not right for this show. So you can't really, it's not black and white at all. There's so many different angles and approaches, and you know, somebody might show up in town tomorrow with the script the likes of which no one's ever seen, and it makes more money than anything ever done and wins every award, and people are like, what the hell was that? We'd never seen anything like it. We didn't think it would work, and it's brilliant. You know, anything can go. You know, but there's also rules that work in certain ways for what people are looking for. So there are no rules from one point of view, and there are real rules from another point of view. And all that's real. If you invent an entirely new type of car, it still has to fit on the damn road, fit in a garage, even if it runs on goldfish. You know, it's like, it's still got to fit certain aspects of the infrastructure that's out there.
Right. So you can know music, you can be Roger Daltrey and still follow the right pitch and cadence and all that. I don't know much about music, but you can still be unhinged and wild. And now you have Tommy, and now you have this like wild sort of creature. And this is what you're talking about with writing, that you want to see someone that's got fangs and claws and
even like with ordinary people. There's not a car chase or a gunfight anywhere within 10,000 miles of that script, but it's so compelling. It's absolutely riveting, and it's shocking, it's powerful. So it's more about not blowing more stuff up, but going deeper and not going down the same rut that everybody else is going down. You know, it's just, don't settle for less. Be a dynamic storyteller, and you know, don't make weak, predictable choices. That kind of thing is what I'm talking about.
okay.
Because you get that at home for free. People go to the movies to see something fresh and dynamic and world-changing. The people that go to the movies are hoping that your movie will change the way they think for the rest of their life. People want transformation. They're starving for it. They open up their brain and go, do something, anything. They want a real experience. They want you to knock their socks off. They don't want to see the same warmed over murder mystery that they can see coming 30 miles away and know who did it, 10 minutes into the movie. It's like, I don't have this 2 hours to watch crap. I need something powerful.